I went through depression really hard. As I got to a point where I didn't feel like anyone loved me, I wanted to kill myself. I've been taunted, criticized, and humiliated and beat up for being something that I wasn't.
Hey love, I haven't forgotten about you. Sipping on my vodka, I call to simply say I'm still your baby.
What's poppin', YouTube? This is your boy Tereaz, and before we begin, please like, share, and hit the subscribe button for more content. Hello, my name is Tereaz, and today I'll be doing my coming out story. I first realized my identity around the age of 14 years old. I at that time had experienced a lot of things and had a lot of things to process to actually come into terms with how I felt. Being in the closet just means you don't want anyone to know that you're there, and you want your lifestyle private, and you don't want it to be well known. I've dealt with homophobia from the age of 5 years old. I remember wanting to play basketball with these kids. They were a tad bit older than me, and I was 5 years old. And I remember trying to catch the ball, and the boy purposely came up and punched me in my ear and called me a faggot. I remember my hearing going out for a moment, and I just heard like this loud, it was like my hearing just went out for a moment. And I just kept thinking, I don't want to do this no more if I'm going to get hurt. And I just remember from then on, growing up and being called gay, a faggot, a sissy. And I remember not even knowing what that was. I honestly did not know what being gay or homosexuality, I did not know any of those things until I turned 14, or honestly around 13, 12 years old. I feel like there's a expectation to be seen and to be a certain way. And ever since I was 5 years old, I've never wanted to be seen in the way that I knew that the culture would push us to aspire to be. I've always been wanting to be more than what I am, or be more than what the world can only see me as. And I think in anything that you do in life, no matter what you do, if you're not going with the grain of what everyone expects you to do and be and say, people are going to point it out and trying to paint a different narrative of it. And unfortunately, at 5 years old, this guy does not operate, move, carry himself, speak as one would expect me to. Ever since 5 years old to now, people try to create this character and narrative of who I am. And so I was labeled a faggot, a sissy, gay, when I was not at the time. And from there, that's where judgment came upon myself from others, because I didn't have a big brother to grow up with. I didn't have a father to be around all the time to teach me this, or not even to teach me that. If there was no masculine energy for me. So I had feminine energy to only pull from, and that's what I only pulled and carried on. And at 5 years old, I'm being called gay, a faggot, a sissy, a bitch. I've dealt with hearing family members make comments I remember my father's mother. She, don't know, I witnessed a conversation with her and my mother, and the first thing she said was, you need to get that boy playing sports because he's gonna turn out gay. And I'm like, if I was a homosexual, if I was gay, I have an attraction to men. So if you put me in a gym, locker room full of men changing their clothes, wouldn't you fear more? But at that age, I was 9 years old when that statement was made. And it did nothing but hurt my feelings to hear it every 2 seconds. Because it's like, you guys are calling me something I'm not. And growing up, looking back at it now, I understand why why it happened to me, and it's sad, and it's everything that I stand for and against. The sad reality of it is that a lot of people classify men that do have feminine energy, which I do, and always have since I was 5 years old. I grew up in a house of women. My mom, my sister is 9 years older than me, and my baby sister was 2 years younger than me. And my father did not live in the house with us. So all I had was my sisters. And then, you know, not many of the women in my family were long with their husbands. So, you know, my grandmother, my mother had 3 sisters, and there was no men. So it was feminine energy for me to pull from. Not to say that that's what made me gay, but that's what made me carry more feminine to masculine energy. My mother has partied and hung out and socialized with homosexuals all of my life. My mother's never treated anyone different, and so it allowed her children to see the homosexuals and bisexuals, you know, as regular people, because that's what they were and are to us. When me and my sister grew up, we never viewed them any different, but it was when, you know, going to school was, you know, the homophobic comments were being made, and that was what shined a light on, you know, the gay lifestyle in itself. I've never had a, you know, moment. And my mother found many love letters, many notes to girls that I was trying to pursue at the time. But the world, the people that had everything else to do but worry about their fucking selves wanted to throw that type of pressure on a kid. And sadly, that's what I dealt with. I was a young boy who lived in the house with his sisters, and I had feminine energy. I still love girls. I love women. I love ass and butts. But the reality of the situation is that the folks in my community, the people that I grew up with, the way I carried myself was such a problem that they continued to poke, and condemning me to be something that I never was, because I've been bullied, I've been beat up, I've had things happen to me because of what they thought I was. And eventually I just remember being alone. I remember being by myself. I went through depression really hard. I wanted to kill myself because I got to a point where I didn't feel like anyone loved me. And I turned to music to be able to express those feelings because I didn't have anyone honestly to talk to. I remember really feeling alone. But I remember going through my process of trying to understand what was going on with myself and exploring to see if I did have an attraction to men, and I did. But once I did, there was a realization of accepting it for myself and then worrying about how the world was going to accept it also, which at this point of 14 years old, I've been taunted and criticized and humiliated and beat up for being something that I wasn't, and now I'm accepting being it. It's how is the world going to view me? So the world, definitely, the people that I was around in the community that I was around, they made it a difficult situation and they made a kid want to die several times and several times over. But it wasn't an easy process for me. I remember the only person that I told was this girl named Bianca. She was my best friend. She was like a sister to me, and she made me feel like there was finally one person on this earth that actually cared about me and didn't make me feel alone. When I came out to her, I remember it was me, her, and her boyfriend. I remember we were hanging out with each other. We were watching Kill Bill. It was, for some reason, we were all out of school, and so we just hung out and chilled with each other. And then she ended up getting a call from a friend that she used to go to school with. And I remember the individual coming out saying that, you know, he was. And so I eventually was playing around with her and him, and, you know, tried to act like I was just playing around, but I ended up playing around and getting his number. And from there, we ended up talking, and then I told her after that I ended up actually conversing with him and getting to know him more, and letting her know that I was talking to her friend that she introduced me to. My coming out process to my family was the worst. I remember my mother was having a going away party, and everybody was hanging out downstairs drinking, and one of my best friends, he ended up grabbing some liquor also, and he ended up having this whole outburst in the bedroom where he was throwing shit around and all this. He was literally crazily intoxicated, and eventually he ended up like calming the fuck down and having a breakdown and just crying. And when I remembered like just making sure that he was good and he calmed down, and I let him have my bed, and I went into my baby sister's room and went to sleep. I couldn't even remember where she was at, but she wasn't there. But I fell asleep, woke back up the next day, and I was actually getting ready to go see the person that I was actually dating, and we were all going to go to the movies. And first we were going to church and then we were going to go to the movies. And so as me and my best friend were getting ready for church, we started talking about what happened, and then he apologized and whatnot, and I was like, no, there's nothing to be, you know, apologetic for. You were drunk. Then my older sister comes to my bedroom, she says, did you and such and such have sex? And I'm like, wait, what? And so it was like people were speculating that we had sex, and I'm like, we didn't do anything. He got drunk and had an outburst, and I was just caught off guard. We went to church and blah blah blah, went to the mall, then we met up with my significant other at the time, then we went to the movies. As I'm sitting there, and my mom's she's an awesome person, but my mom doesn't play. And so at the age of 16, 17, no, I was 17 at the time, 17. I had my own car, but it was in my mom's name because I was too young to have it in my name. And so I was sitting in the movies, and my mom was blowing my phone up and blowing it up, and I was ignoring her. And then she hit me with the threat call to call her. So I immediately ran to the bathroom to go see what she wanted. And then when I went, she was, what is this I hear about you being gay? Did you have sex? They said that, you know, folks said that you had sex. And I said to myself, oh my gosh, no. And she just said, Tereaz, if you're gay, you could tell me. And I had a moment where I said no again. I was getting ready to say no again. And then I paused and I thought about it. And I said, one, I'm never going to tell my mother willingly, because I'm private. I am a huge private person. And she used to actually party and hang out with homosexuals and gay people. My mother is a very open-minded person, and she's free-spirited herself. She's never really cared about stuff like that. My mother always believed in treating people like they were human, and it made me feel comfortable enough to say to her, well, I'm never going to tell her again or have the opportunity, and she's asking now. So give my mother the opportunity to know who her son is and know me. And I said, Mom, yes, I am gay, but I didn't have sex with him. And then she was like, well, we're going to talk about it when you get home. We never had that conversation, but it was a good emotion. It was a teaching lesson for me, and I enjoyed it because, even though I didn't want it to be out that way, but it happened that way. I don't know. I hated, honestly, the fact that people made it such a big deal. It was like, it was a situation until I was backed into a corner and I had to do that. I didn't really, I felt, in a sense, yes, violated, because it wasn't true. I had to do it on somebody else's terms, and that's not fun for anyone. But I'm happy that it happened in general, because at least my mother was able to now know her son and know her child. And not only that, my mother has protected me from so many remarks and statements, even with family members. And I think that's what I love more about it, because even with dealing with homophobia in general, to know that you have some type of protection, it meant a lot for me. Being out to me is living free of your sexuality in your own right, and whatever that means to you. If I could do it all over again, I would be more fearless of being myself. Because at the end of the day, the one thing that I have learned is that people are going to think what the fuck they want to think anyway. So do you, be you, and live you in your truth. And with that being said, for anyone that wants to come out or wanting to come out, I say again, you do what makes you happy. You know your situation, you know your story. And so just make sure that the pages that you fill out your life is going to be one that you are happy to go back and tell and read to other people. That'll be the best I could put it.